All right, I think we're all good to get started. So, hello and welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar session on adapting to change, scalable job architecture that reduces manual HR work. My name is Alex Bishop, and I'm a customer marketing associate here at Salary.com and delighted to be the host for this session. So, just a couple of admin items before we get started. We will share a copy of these slides as well as this recording via email within a couple of days after the session. If you'd like to have your questions answered during the Q&A at the end, please drop them in the Q&A box on Zoom instead of the chat box if you would. We'll try to get to all the questions, but if we don't, we'll be sure to follow up with you over email on those questions. All right, so I am pleased to introduce Abe, Senior Compensation Consultant at Salary.com. Abe has more than 20 years of experience in compensation. He has deep knowledge in developing programs, managing budgets, administering plans, and evaluating results. Over his career, he's handled market increases totaling 10 million. His expertise covers job analysis, market benchmarking, regulatory compliance, and pay structure design. That includes base salary, incentive plans, and specialty pay programs. What really stands out about Abe is how he balances competitiveness with cost control. He helps organizations create market-driven programs that attract great talent while also standardizing performance measures and writing clear, detailed job descriptions. He's also an active member of World of Work, so he keeps up with the latest and best practices. Abe, thank you very much for joining us today. So,
Thank,
oh, sorry.
I was just going to say thank you very much.
Happy to have you. All right, so looking at our agenda really briefly today. So Abe's going to start with the real cost of manual job data work, where those hours actually go and where they keep growing even when nothing looks broken. From there, what scalable job architecture looks like in practice, not theory, which is looking at the specific design and governance choices that separate structures that hold up from ones that fall apart. Then an honest look at automation and AI and what's genuinely working today, what isn't there yet, and where the line is. And before we wrap, the part you'll want to screenshot, it's 5 questions to find where your own architecture is creating drag and what to fix first. Again, we'll save time at the end for your questions, so please feel free to drop them in the Q&A panel as we go. Abe, again, thankful to have you on this awesome webinar, and I'll hand it off to you right now.
Thanks, Alex. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone that's joined us today. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat and make sure you answer the poll. I want to make sure that we have kind of a session that works for you. So I want to kind of start with the conclusion. Most of the job data work that HR teams are doing right now isn't really a workload problem. It is in some instances, but a lot of it is a workload problem of your own creation. I've been there. I spent 20 plus years managing compensation where it was 4 people whittled down to 3 people to 1 person to where you're wearing multiple hats. And those are the times where your job architecture really can get broken. A lot of times what you'll experience is you'll run your favorite report before you begin your market analysis or doing a compensation cycle, and you'll start to think, where in the world did these job titles come from? What do they mean? And if those are instances that you face, you're in good company because I experience that when I work with clients a lot. There's no red light that's ever going to jump up and let you know that, hey, congratulations, your job titles now exceed your head count. Your job titles don't make sense. There's no alarm. No one's going to let you know. Instead, what usually happens is the work will arrive at your desk or in your inbox in small, usually reasonable requests, job title change here and there. We have all been there. A manager needs a job posted by Tuesday. A reorganization changes reporting lines that's never updated in the job description. There's always that good employee that needs just a little extra step in compensation or title to keep them around. And then we all have worked with recruiters, I'm sure, that need to have that hot job title for them to get the applicants that they think they need at the moment. All of these are reasonable requests. And we are people pleasers. HR wants to help. You want to help. And so what happens is we usually address those needs in isolation and we don't consider the overall architecture or what these exceptions can do to us down the road. What can happen, in my experience, both personally and working with clients, is that you end up managing the exception and trying to get the organization from chasing the exception and following the architecture. The pattern's pretty consistent. Compensation will reprice the role. Sometimes it's a big project. Everyone in the organization is on board. Sometimes there's increases, so everyone's really happy. We're high-fiving. But over time, you have turnover, you have mergers, you have reorganizations, and those are the kind of things that really put pressure on your job architecture. And they require a pause to reflect on the accuracy and consider rewriting or re-leveling your architecture. If you don't keep up with, there's a lot of downstream difficulties that you can face based on having a job architecture that doesn't make sense or is quietly broken. Today, what I want to do is help you to identify those areas where you're producing or you're completing hidden work and how to stop performing that work or recreating the wheel and where technology can help you after you've got the foundation ready. Uh, Again, the first thing to understand is that a job architecture typically doesn't break all at once. It happens at over time. So, one thing I want to do is congratulate everyone. If you don't have a job architecture in place already, I'm here to let you know you do. You just aren't aware of it. Each department may have their own perception of a job architecture. Each leader, each facility, or each location, they have a job architecture. They know what they think progression is. It just may not align with what HR or what compensation thinks progression is. Uh, but being more serious, really, again, there's no clear indicator that your jobs are broken. So, what do I mean by broken jobs? There are things like inconsistent job titles. Maybe you have senior with an SR or spelled out, senior before the title or after the title. Maybe senior means something different from department to department. So there's no real consistency in your titling. You may have runaway acronyms. You may have multiple acronyms in your title that don't make sense to people in the organization. And that's a challenge. And that makes it very difficult for recruiters, for you to market price, and for other functions to do their piece in the employment cycle. Uh, so what happens is through no specific event, over time, you'll allow some exceptions, or you'll have an exception process in place that may require CHRO approval, or maybe your boss's approval, or maybe your approval for any changes to job descriptions or title or compensation to a certain extent. We all know those exceptions typically get approved, particularly if it's on a Friday or if if the leader you're working with has a lot of political capital in the organization. And over time, those exceptions become what you're managing. You're managing to that title that you didn't want to create in the first place, or that department that has four levels that doesn't make sense. So those are the kinds of issues that my clients face, and we're going to talk about how you can take reasonable steps to address those and fix that. So on this slide, we're looking at three examples. At the top, we're looking at a compensation cycle that begins, and half the job descriptions are stale. Half job descriptions being stale isn't, that I've seen a lot worse. If you have job descriptions for half of your positions, that's a win. But in this example, half of the job descriptions are stale. So that leads to the recruiter asking you for a new version of the job description, right? So your job description is stale. The recruiter's asking for it, and guess what? It's urgent. Breathing down their neck. We got to have them in orientation on Monday. So you handle it as a one-off. The one-off doesn't make it back to you in a governed job catalog. You don't get that data back on what the qualifications were, what level, what the functions changed, and that one-off then lives in your compensation structure ongoing. Uh, I've seen this specifically in, like a county-wide project that I worked on where we were trying to get to the root, doing a classification study of what employees actually did. So we developed a position description questionnaire and we received feedback from specific employees. And when we got that analysis back, we found a lot of people with very similar, if not the exact same titles, that had broad differences in scope and responsibility. So title alone, you've really got to get to the root of the job and understand the scope, responsibility, and the expertise that's needed. So another example that comes to mind, you know, when you're trying to build out these scaled responses to these types of issues is, we run into companies that will use a Roman numeral in a title, and sometimes that's treated as a universal level, but it's not. They think that everyone's following their title. IT thinks that everyone has 7 levels of each job, but that's just not the case. The lesson that I want to kind of convey today is pretty simple. A title is a label, the grade is the pay relationship to the structure, and then the career level describes the actual work being performed. When you have those three things in place, your job description completion becomes a lot easier because your framework is going to determine the qualifications in a lot of areas. And also the leveling will provide information on the type of work and the scope of the responsibility. So if your current job catalog includes a senior specialist one, a senior specialist two, senior specialist three, and a principal senior specialist, you may have a job family, or you might also have a new streaming service or a streaming series, because those types of job titles and the repetitive nature of them can often sound like a TV show. Before we go any further, Alex is going to ask us a quick poll question.
Awesome. All right, yeah. So before we dive in, as Abe said, we take a quick poll to understand where everyone is feeling the most pain right now. All right, so I'm gonna launch that right now. So the poll question is, how confident are you that your job architecture can keep up with how fast your organization changes? The options are very confident, somewhat confident, not very confident, not confident at all, and not sure. All right. So we'll give that another minute or so here. It looks like not very confident is in the lead. Abe, in your experience, do you think that not very confident would be, the most popular answer for this one?
I think that compensation folks are some of the smartest people in HR, and one sign of intelligence is to be able to understand where you have problems that you don't know about. And I think that leads to a lack of confidence. You can have some days that you feel really confident, and other days where, just the world drags you around, drags your programs to places they're not intended to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that very well could be reflected here. I'm going to end it now as most people have taken it, and then I'm going to share the results right now as well. So, again, how confident are you that your job architecture can keep up with how fast your organization changes? In tied for last is very confident and not sure, so the two extremes. And then second to last is not confident at all. And then almost tied for first, but not quite. We have somewhat confident that came in second, and not very confident that came in first. So, again, Abe, you just touched briefly on it, but is that very surprising to you or not quite?
No, no, I think it's right there in the that unknown. I think all three of those answers kind of show me that there's an unknown out there, that the the that there are departments doing things, or maybe recruiters that have an understanding, or that we're not speaking the same language. So that leads to a lack of confidence. The quickest way to gain confidence is to provide transparency, but it's also one of the most difficult things to do without a solid framework. And that's what a job architecture allows you to do, is to create a standardized language. And a lot of times you'll inherit an architecture. So you're still getting familiar with what was in place as things are changing. So really you're getting hit on all three fronts. So that's
Well
not
said.
not real surprising.
Absolutely well said, Abe. All right. Please feel free to take it away from here.
Thank you very much. Again, we're taking a look at some examples of where job architecture breaks. Job descriptions being stale are a big problem. One tip that you may consider is requiring a job description review before any jobs are posted. So before you post a job, make the manager sign off on it. and that gives you some tool to keep job descriptions accurate. However, with turnover and with new managers, the last thing you want is for a manager to start rewriting every job description. So it would behoove you to create some sort of template or some sort of guidance on what you're looking for. In my past life, I created a new job description packet that asked some basic questions, usually kind of geared towards the architecture that we had already built around the level of experience, where they're gonna set, what the qualifications would be. Uh, so job descriptions being stale puts you in kind of a defensive position. So if you can pick a large department or job descriptions where you have a lot of incumbents, where some good work there and updates, that would be a win for you. Uh, the job matrix often, it doesn't make any sense across your organization. And by job matrix, I mean, the level of qualifications and responsibilities and requirements for a job based on the level of the position and the career grouping. Uh, so in this instance, we've seen a lot of success by breaking this up, taking the stale job descriptions, breaking them down into workable chunks, working with a partner either in HR, or I'd highly recommend, someone in the department, maybe not the department manager, confirming the accuracy, getting to the root need of what expertise is needed the at the department level. You really don't want to design your levels based on who you can hire. You really want to design them on what the need is. So here's where I find that a lot of time is spent by the HR department, and how you kind of end up missing the opportunities to update your job architecture or actually create a job architecture. You're spending a lot of time updating job descriptions, lots and lots of updating of job descriptions. If you're lucky enough to have a tool, you're able to do that electronically. If not, you're managing multiple versions of Word saved across a number of different areas. If you could, one win, just if you could create one repository for job descriptions for your organization, or for at least hiring managers to go to and recruiters to go to, where they have one official document, that would be a big win. Also, and I got this a lot, you get a lot of reclass requests. And what do I mean by reclass? It could be anything. Usually it's a job description update in the search of a higher pay opportunity or higher pay grade. Those come through usually one at a time, and they have to be evaluated independently of a broader architecture if you don't have one. So what does that mean? That means you're getting a proposal for a senior job. You need to go look, make sure that the job actually does reflect senior. Does it require enough experience to actually be considered senior? Is it consistent with other seniors in your organization? And then when you have a pay structure in place, do you have enough grades to support a senior? What if you have a supervisor and a level four as well? I've seen a lot of instances where the salary structure just not line up with the number of levels that an organization wants to create. And a lot of times you end up inflating wages. You create hidden costs of compensation that drives up payroll, where you have a lot of payroll expenses on expertise that's not needed to complete the function. Also, you are these exceptions, they take up a lot of time because you're doing your market pricing again. You're repricing the same job with slight changes in the hopes of a different outcome. Whereas if you have a job architecture in place, you could have meaningful discussions about the market pricing, the level of the role, and whether or not the expertise that they are asking for is appropriate for the function. And it makes you a little bit more credible in your conversations, and you're actually advising departments on how to be successful rather than just kind of putting out fires. Also, having not having an architecture in place can make it really difficult to ever do any kind of pay equity analysis, or even just some basic in-grade analysis if you're not big enough for regression modeling. So a lot of times the pay equity stalls because your career groupings or your levels aren't consistent, making it really difficult to create those similarly situated groups for analysis. My big experience was the reclassification or reevaluation requests. I worked in healthcare. It was a hot market, so the every day was a new competitor. The competitor was the person down the street that was giving away hoodies or had a 50 cent extra differential on the night. So that really makes things tough. If you don't have an architecture that's approved and you have levels, that cover the different expected functional expertise for that department, you're kind of handling everything as one-offs. One of the big things that really helps me before we even begin a project, and it helps as a control mechanism, is just kind of making sure that you have a data readiness gate before you begin anything. And it might help you as well to reconcile your job list. I know you've got a lot of free time, but maybe you have a partner in HR that can help. So pull all your jobs, pull all of your employees, reconcile the two, identify where you have jobs that are hanging out there that aren't being used or you're not sure what they are, and take a moment and if you can inactivate those. If they're not being used, there's no need to have those hanging out there as a potential job posting, particularly if you're not confident in the content. And when someone does need to post it, then you can use that as a cue to update the job description. And then here's something to always ask yourself. If if compensation, recruiting, and also let's say you have a generalist or a business partner function, if they all receive the same job description or a new job request from a manager, you think all three of them would start from the same place? Would they start from the same system? Would they go to the same location to find the job description? Would they take their lens and apply it elsewhere? So really, no one's trying to do a bad job, but the lack of transparency and the lack of an architecture or one that's working for the business and is aligned to your compensation leads to these one-off exceptions and, isolated job architectures at a department. So this really kind of explains why adding staff to the compensation function isn't going to fix this problem. It can clear your backlog, but it won't solve the issue. You'll just build your backlog again over time. So without a framework and a process and buy-in from, HR, from your department head, and then all the way up through the organization, and clearly communicating, this is what a senior means, and these are the expectations. Uh, it really does open you up to free more time on that maintenance of the job architecture and maintenance of your compensation programs rather than, editing Word documents, deleting commas, uh, doing any of the functions that really drag away from what you're trying to do, which is provide compensation recommendations and support aligned with your strategy. All right. So the one thing that's just to be a little bit funny, spreadsheets are awesome, but they are not awesome when they're the only place where your job architecture is stored. So if your job architecture is named final underscore list version 7 and saved on your desktop, there's pretty good chance you're the only one that's following it. So so once it's built, you want to be more transparent about it. Maybe you start small, you put some definition around your levels. Level one means this at our organization, and these are the types of activities that it does, and this is the type of experience and education they require. All right, so here are the four symptoms of misalignment. They aren't all of them, but they cover a big group of them. The first is inflation and proliferation of titles. We just kind of talked about that. Every title has a reasonable story behind it, but looking at them and as a large group, they don't make a lot of sense. Uh, you know, we all have the example of a hiring manager that needs a stronger title to attract that candidate. The department that wants to recognize expanded responsibility for someone. A lot of times they're implementing a new software or they want to, they're being asked to implement new software, or an admin job is being asked to do additional, more technical work. Uh, that can lead to, a new job request. It makes it difficult for you to manage that and your architecture all in the same day. Uh, the one thing that I have found that no manager really ever submits a request and says, please make this job sound less strategic. You're not going to find that very often. Uh, the other thing to be on the watch out for is the single purpose job, which usually means that it's a single person role. And these are usually created around one person, one project, one checkbox on an organization chart. Some are legitimate, but a good warning sign is if the job can't be reused for the next person, or if you can't envision that new job being functional anywhere else, that might be a warning sign. Another warning sign or sign of misalignment is that the job description belongs to no real job family. It may be accurate sentence to sentence, but it doesn't connect to a common set of accountabilities, level expectations, skills, or a career path. Those could be things like, your admin coordinator with no clear description. You can find those anywhere, and they can be places where employees get stuck and, they don't have a description or a way to be evaluated. So you're not really serving the employee very well if you have those, job titles that aren't tied to a description or to a family. The fourth big thing that you'll notice is that you'll have less confidence in your market matching. When a job becomes too complicated, the available benchmarks become less comparable. Try to keep your managers and your partners focused on the core responsibilities of the role. What are the main functions of the job? Keep them away from the administrative tasks or documenting every tool that's used to perform the function. I like to recommend, and this is just me, I like 5 to 7, up to 10 at the most essential functions. And I like those essential functions, in your job descriptions to begin with action statements. So what are they actually doing? And what does it look like to be doing it? Ideally, any of your job descriptions those functions could be easily kind of reworded and become you know things that could be used in a performance appraisal. So you could turn those essential functions into performance measures. There was one project I worked on recently with a professional services client, and the original request was not just, market price new jobs. What their request was, and they didn't know how to get there, was for managers to be able to have meaningful career conversations. So what do I mean by meaningful career conversations? Aside from, having a manager that knows the employee really well, uh, it would be meaningful to be able to display where those jobs where they qualify show up, and where they might be able to qualify for additional jobs with some development. The only way that you're going to be able to do that, in my experience, is to connect job families, levels, skills, and competencies so that an employee can see what changes from one level to the next and what are the types of activities or behavioral indicators that are witnessed when someone changes from one level to the next. This can help to reduce pressure to invent titles because your architecture now becomes a key tool in the manager's retention belt, or it allows the manager to have meaningful conversations with an employee that has issues rather than, kind of being a sounding board. Once they're using those as employee relations tools, they become valuable to them and they're going to want to support that. Another thing to remember is, and when you're doing your design, is that different job families can have different career levels in the same pay grade. So that's not automatically a flaw. Not everybody that's a junior needs to be in one pay grade. And just because you have a senior in your title doesn't mean that you're all market priced the same. Your structure still drives market pricing, and then your levels are independent of each other depending on the family and function. And then Lastly, I know I'm going a little bit long, but one tip I have, and this is really where you can buy yourself a lot of credibility, is make sure that your job architecture design uh, keeps the business in mind. You don't necessarily need five levels of every job in every department. There's probably a lot of companies that you guys work for where you don't need extended experience or that level of expertise in certain functions. But if you create it, you end up paying for it. So, or you end up, that's another area where I've seen expertise. If you, or I've experienced issues where you have that expert level job or job level in a family, you don't necessarily, it makes you nervous. You're not really sure you need it. But it's hanging out there. And over time, I've seen this where everyone in the department will become that highest level. And then you'll get a request from the manager asking you to revise the job description of the highest level. And depending on who that goes to, or if they had the time to catch that up front, you end up rewriting the highest level as your base level or a level two, and your market pricing gets all out of whack. So here's kind of the exception chain. Each exception creates at least three new decisions. How do we level it? How do we price it? How do we treat it in pay equity or range placement? And this is why single purpose jobs are an annoyance, and 60 becomes a new FTE. Uh, you'll want to make sure that if you're experiencing the problem that you're always behind, even when everyone's working hard, you always got more job descriptions to look at. This is not this fix is not a perfect architecture. If you have all of those issues, you don't have an architecture that's working. Um, However, perfect is not available all the time. You're going to have to maintain it throughout the year because organizations do keep changing. Uh, Experience levels change, new tools are brought onto the market, new skills and competencies are expected. So there are three design decisions that I look for whenever I'm going about building a job architecture to start with. First is that I would recommend using broader job profiles. So your job profiles can be broad, and then let your levels do the talking. So let those do the differentiating from one incumbent skills and competencies to the next, or their expectations. Your profile should describe the work of this family. So it should be the durable work, the work that's always going to be existing in that family, the actual function of the job. Your level criteria should then explain how scope, complexity, influence, and knowledge increase from level to level. Usually that's reflected in additional experience, additional essential functions, or uh, more essential functions performing a little bit more senior type of work with greater responsibilities. Second would be to separate the job from the position. The job is reusable definition of work. The actual position is specific seat, a person, a location, a manager, or in an organizational assignment. When those are mixed together, or every organization becomes a job data project. So if you can separate that. Third, write your leveling criteria once and apply them everywhere. Managers can provide evidence of how they hire to help you out. They should not have to negotiate a new definition of senior for every request. So you should have a built out framework of what you'd like to see. Then comes the part that determines whether your design survives, and that's governance. And most architecture redesigns get a steering committee, a project plan, and enough spreadsheets to drown in. Uh, the new job request process often gets a form and good intentions, but when the request process is not capturing the right information, nor is it diligently used, this is where the architecture can really fall apart. A strong intake process would answer five things. I talked about the new job reevaluation request and job description packet I've used in the past. All of those were trying to get at ultimately, one, what business need is changing? Is this a new business need? Is it changing? If so, what are we replacing? Don't forget to ask, is this job replacing an existing job? Is someone performing this work currently? So, what business need is changing? Two, does an existing profile already cover the work? So, do we already have a person or job doing the work? Three, what documented evidence supports the requested level? Do you have a draft job description? Do you have, do you have meeting notes? Do you have anything that could help us to align together on this requested level? And then four, who approves the exceptions once you build your architecture? I've seen it, a lot of organizations will have exceptions built in place around compensation, but they won't around job descriptions or architecture. So there's going to be some education that needs to occur here if you want someone to support you by requiring their their authority for exceptions. Exceptions are going to be approved if you don't tell that approving authority what good and bad looks like. You need to be in communication with them. A lot of times the CHRO would be your exception, or CHRO in concert with the COO or the CEO, or whatever makes sense for your organization. But it gives you a chance to meet with your HR leader and make the case before any approvals occur. Right. One example at a mission-driven organization I worked with, we consolidated a bunch of multi-level jobs into a simpler structure, but we were explicit that it was a bridge to a broader future reorganization. So we built a simple structure. The success that we identified was not the exact number of levels, it was the ability to explain the architecture and the transition while maintaining market and internal equity, and then define amongst leadership how new decisions would be governed during this period. You'll want to set your expectations honestly. You're not going to be able to build an architecture overnight. You're also not going to be able to improve overnight. But it does happen over quarters. If you use the comp cycle, a lot of times that can be a good time to pause and then make improvements for the next cycle. You'll want to think in matters of months and years, not days. Uh, but once the standards are in place, once you do build the tools and you are public with them and you maintain them, you can stop the flow of extra work. You can kind of stop the rat race for a little bit and make your job a little bit more strategic and allow for more time to complete those tasks. All right. So what's real and what's not real in technology? A lot of folks are using AI, including myself, every day. AI and automation are useful today. The question really is, where do they belong in the decision? The tools can compress the middle of the work, in my experience. They can draft a job description, extract skills, identify potential duplicates, suggest levels, even recommend market matches. And at times, they can organize large amounts of job content quickly. And that's a real value. On large projects, that changes what used to be a one-person project, a serial process, into something that we actually review. So we're sign off instead of actually doing the work. This allows the analyst to spend less time starting from a blank page and more time testing whether the suggestion reflects the actual work. It's more plug and play than inventing each time. But judgment is important to stay at both ends. At the front end, you're going to need a person to define and understand the business problem and recognize whether it's real. You'll then need someone to apply the architecture rules that you've designed, and then apply the evidence the tool should use, be it a draft job description, usually, or it may be an intake form that you design. At the back end, you would need someone to approve the job, the level, and the market match, and then flush out any exception. So this is an area where, I would have loved to have had this in the past. Uh, create a form, ask your manager to complete it, ask pointed questions on what's different from one level to the next, and then use your AI tool to evaluate whether it's a new position or you have an existing position or level within your architecture. So many times you wouldn't be recreating or creating a new job description if you could just point the manager easily to a job that exists that's appropriate for them. So that's one thing to keep in match. You know, AI can write a job description in seconds. It can also give every job strategic influence and cross-functional leadership if you're not paying attention. Uh, but it also can help to be the time saver on output. It can provide you with organized results that you can review in a large group at one time rather than having to get into the specific details. Uh, there's a simple test I like to use. If the tool recommends a level, can we explain the recommendation using documented factors such as scope, complexity, decision authority, and organizational impact? If it can't, that's a suggestion, not a decision. And the only way that it can explain that is if you have a Java architecture framework and key that your AI tool is using as its knowledge. One thing that you'll want to do is avoid treating any suggestions that your AI models might make as decisions because they may create cleanup work later. Also, you'll want to avoid automating any inconsistent architecture that produces bad data. So if it's not working, stop what you're doing and do the investigative work to determine why the AI is recommending, the wrong job family, the wrong level, or if your level isn't providing the right expected qualifications or competencies. A lot of times that can be an issue with stale source data in your project or in your model. So the sequence that I like to recommend is, governance first, uh, cleanup second, and automation last. So Alex had mentioned this at the start of our session that there were going to be five questions that you'd want to make sure that you paid attention to, and these are the five questions. These five questions can turn a broad concern into something you can actually diagnose. So, how many job titles do you have per 100 employees? There's really no universal magic number. Your industry, geography, union status, and operating model will influence that. Also, if you're trying to support multiple pay programs, via job code eligibility, that can drive job code creation. But you really want to try and avoid having more job codes and titles than you do employees. You also would like to avoid having one incumbent per job title. That's just a nightmare. And we know that that's just not accurate. Second, how many days pass from we need a new job to be leveled and priced and until you return that to them? Is there a standard? Do you have a set time frame? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 1 week? What's reasonable for you? If you could determine what that process looks like and commit to an output returning to a customer or to an internal partner, that will give you more authority in what you ask of them. So if you're going to ask for them to complete a lot of information on an intake form to get to this data, to get to the information you need to level and apply an architecture, you're going to want to have some kind of standards on your processes internally to return that. Um, the exact target for when you need it turned around really depends on the complexity of your organization and the tools in place. So without, an AI tool doing this would obviously take a little bit longer. If most of your time is spent, gathering the data, the same folk facts, researching the job titles in the department, researching the job titles in the organization, pulling job descriptions, you've got a big chance to use some tools, to use technology to slow that turnaround down. Also, it can standardize your output. You may, depending on time, you may respond with a lot of your best wisdom and guidance to one manager, but the next request may get a really short answer based on what you've got going on that day. AI tools can help you to deliver the same experience to each of your partners. And then also you'll want to consider sharing which of your jobs fell below your market match confidence in the last threshold. So which of these new jobs do you not understand? And Do you not have a good way to market price? And have those meaningful conversations with your department leaders on where they would fit in the architecture. A lot of times, getting a SME or a department expert to think through where a job would fit in an architecture forces them to not think of that specific person or that specific title as a one-off superstar and makes them kind of recognize that they are part of a broader framework and we need to understand where they fit. Understanding that will then allow you to apply some of your architecture facts or your governance facts to that. Okay, here's the qualifications that we would expect. Here's the types of responsibility and scope we would expect that to have. You'll want to get, as much alignment between the survey description and the benchmark. Fourth, when was the last full job description refreshed and what triggered it? Obviously, we don't recommend rewriting the entire job catalog every year just to prove that you did it, but we would recommend creating an internal process or expectation that would naturally keep your jobs reviewed and refreshed. Two ways that I've seen success, if you are diligent about it, is requiring that manager sign off on the job description before job postings, also requiring that managers sign off on the job description or provide any updates during employee reviews. So that's one way to catch the job descriptions at the time of hire and then also at the time of assessment. And then fifth, I, be real clear about who owns the job data. I'm looking for one accountable owner. Even if many people contribute, you need one owner. Uh, Is it comp? If it's right now, if it's comp, HRS, and the HR business partner, that just tells you that it's collaborators, and your business leaders and your partners in the organization will know who actually owns it. It does not identify who can say no to an unnecessary job, nor does it provide guidance on whose approvals needed for changes. So if you want to right now at these questions, kind of think to yourself, 1 to 5, where do you fit in this? So if governance is where you would start, that's where we would recommend it as well. Governance comes first because without cleanup, you really can't. Without the cleanup, you can't have decision rules in place. Anything that you design is temporary if you don't have the cleanup first. You can create a beautiful catalog and watch it erode again and again as soon as the next hiring cycle begins if you don't have a true governance framework in place, an architecture. So if governance is your weakest area, we would recommend using the first 90 days to name the accountable owner. If it's yourself, it's CHRO, if it's the head of HRS, whomever, but who is the accountable owner? Then document the request path. Who does it go to? Define the minimum evidence for a new job or reclassification. What data do you need, and who needs to approve it? Identify who does approve the exceptions. Maybe you need some level of approval before you submit a new job. I've worked with organizations in the past where a manager alone couldn't submit a new job description. They required their boss, their department head to sign off on it. You will want to keep it lightweight enough that it's flexible and workable. You don't want it to become more red tape that just feels like HR trying to slow down hiring, or they think that you're working for the CFO and stopping adding new FTEs, because that's not the case. A perfect form that you've designed in your office, but no one wants to use or fill out or has asked for information that no one can access won't be considered governance. It won't get completed. So you need to make it something that's actually completable by the leader. If the symptoms are your weakest area, you'll want to select a high volume or high friction job family, consolidate duplicative titles, align descriptions to a common profile, apply the level criteria they've created, confirm your market matches, and then test the results with your manager. Ensure that they agree with the market matches, ensure that they're comfortable with the leveling criteria. This focused pilot, in an HR friendly department can really go a long way and help you to provide and gather the evidence that would be needed to create a reasonable method, a reasonable AI method without asking the entire organization. If you feel like your current structure is sound, but your process or your work is still slow, uh, you'd really want to look for opportunities for automation here. This is repeatable work such as drafting, duplicate job detection, skills extraction, market match suggestions, version control, and then approval routing, the ability to send draft job descriptions throughout your organization for contributions. Uh, this order will also help protect the business case. Governance reduces future defects. Cleanup improves the data that you already have. So no one's going to argue about that. And then automation will help you to multiply the value of both of these. One of the most successful approaches in my work, in client work, is to treat the first structure of your architecture as a governed operating model, not a one-time deliverable. So this isn't a set it and forget it. As an example, an architecture can be rolled out and can be presented as a first draft or a transitional architecture and a learning opportunity for the organization, where you can actually find out where you need that expertise in which functional areas and apply that refinement on your next compensation cycle. So maybe you only have 3 levels to begin with, or 2 levels, or you further refine, or you further define and formalize what you have currently. Maybe you put some more structure around the job titles that you have, and you get consistency that way before you start building out a new framework. So if you're unsure which starting point applies to you and your current situation, this short diagnostic can help to provide you with the problems quickly where you're finding issues. Uh, always start with the job list. From there, design the intake form. Use a few recent requests to help kind of inform your decision making, and then complete your market pricing. Take that work to a trusted or a peer within the organization that you could roll that out and have meaningful discussions about. Maybe it's an HR business partner for one of your most difficult departments. So let me close with 5 ideas that I want you to carry into your next comp cycle. Manual work is a symptom that something's broken. Uh, if you're doing a lot of manual job data work, something's going wrong, or there's something going on in the organization that you just haven't been made aware of. Maybe there's some expansion, maybe there's some reductions. But it is a symptom if you're getting a lot of manual job data work. The underlying architecture is typically the cause or the lack of having one. You'll want to have durable job profiles that describe the type of work, consistent leveling criteria, and clear separation between jobs and positions. This gives the organization room to grow and change without rebuilding the framework. If you're trying to account for every possible level combination, you're going to end up driving your compensation costs up. You're not going to be able to support it, communicate it, and it's going to be too big for you to be able to maintain. Structures, they usually lose alignment, through reasonable decisions, one at a time. So that's why the a new job and reclassification process matters more than the elegance of the design document. So what are you gathering? When are you doing it? When are you consistent about it? Intake governance determines whether the architecture holds. So That intake form that you design needs to be adoptable, it needs to be understandable, and it also needs to be flexible enough to change as the business change. Having one accountable owner, a clear evidence standard, and an exception path are more valuable than a 40-page policy that nobody can find. Finally, governance first. What are you going to be doing? Clean up second, and then automation last. So many people are starting with automation and they're wondering why they're getting bad outputs. AI is only going to try and work with what you tell it. So you need to give a framework that works for the AI, that it can understand, and it can do all of this heavy lifting for you. Teams that follow this sequence spend merit season using their job data, feeling confident about it. Uh, Teams that don't follow this spend their merit seasons preparing job data, asking what does this person do, which bonus pool are they eligible for. Uh, so if this session sounded uncomfortably familiar, that's probably useful for you. It means that hidden work is visible enough to fix. We can support both sides of the problem in consulting and in software. So please reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Uh, we help design the architecture. We build the leveling framework, the skills, the career paths, and the governance. And then our technology helps to maintain those and develop and implement at scale.
Awesome. Thank you for all of that, Abe. Very, very much appreciated with all of your insights on this. So, to our audience, we do have a software solution to support this work at scale. As Abe has mentioned, we have Job Architect Max, which brings content, market data, and skills into one place, so you're not pricing things together across different tools. As you create or update roles, you can see relevant pay ranges, hiring activity, and market context alongside the job content itself, which makes it easier to stay consistent and make informed decisions. And it is also a more structured way to manage job architecture without adding extra complexity into the process. In addition to that, we also have a team of seasoned expert consultants who partner closely with in-house compensation teams to navigate complex challenges and build effective compliance strategies. Whether it's building job architecture, refining your compensation philosophy, or rolling out pay ranges, our consultants can help you create alignment across your organization and maintain trust with your employees. Awesome. So just going to the next slide here. To wrap up, we have SHRM code and HRCI code. And then if you want to learn more about Job Architect Max, schedule some time, schedule some time to walk through it more in depth. Instead of having a QR code on here, we actually have some links in the chat. So that will be for Job Architect Max and then for the free consultation as well. Free 30-minute consultation is one link, and then scheduling some time to learn more about Job Architect Max is the other link, and that's in the Zoom chat. So again, you have the codes right there, World of Work, no code needed, as you can see on the screen. And then right now, I believe it is time for Q&A. All right, so Abe, looking at the Q&A right here. So when it comes to job architecture, based on everything you discussed, pretty briefly, would you approach this differently for a small business? Um, we only have 35 to 2 duplicate roles and titles. Otherwise, every role only has one person in it.
The question was smaller organization. They have 35 jobs that have more than one person in it.
Mm.
Is that what you said?
Only 1 to 2 duplicate roles and titles. Otherwise, every role only has one person in it.
Oh gosh. Hmm. Uh, do you think that's reasonable that, every job is single incumbent? I It would make it hard that to me that there isn't some comparable work. Uh, I don't think that necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that there's probably some opportunities where you could recognize that some of those incumbents are doing the same work and then create levels, have one profile with multiple levels. I see this a lot of the single incumbents in not-for-profit and some of the charitable work that we experience. So you'll have a lot of program directors or program managers over a specific program, even though they're all kind of doing the same function with a different outreach component or a different audience. So I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that there might be an opportunity because, if you do grow, the expectation now would be that, everyone would have their own job description and title, which makes it tough. So I would say that you're not necessarily in a bad spot, but there might be opportunities for you to align some comparable work together and then develop levels that would separate the the titles.
Awesome. Well said. Thank you for that. So, we have another question here. If you don't have a strong current job architecture in place, how can you use Salary.com products to help build out an architecture?
Oh, that's a great question. And I don't know which configuration or which products you have, but a good framework or a good starting point is your market matching. So go match your jobs to comp analyst market data. Within that, it has a leveling framework. If you go and look at the details, you'll see that there's each one of your market matches is assigned to a career grouping and a level. Those each come with kind of with a baseline of experience and education that you would typically see in the survey match. That can be your starting point. You would right size it to fit you, but an associate one in comp analyst market data is 0 to 2 years of experience with a high school diploma or equivalent or some sort of requirements like that. That could be your level one. Uh, you'd want to have career groupings, so separate your jobs out by professional, or I've had success in the past just separating them by FLSA status, hourly and then exempt and then leadership. And you can use your market matches to help define your actual leveling language and framework. I'd start small, maybe two levels, particularly if you're small. Maybe it's a senior and the actual benchmark. And if you're a small organization, maybe only the senior requires approval. Maybe it requires your CEO or CHRO, just because it would be in a significant investment if you're going to benchmark another job higher than what you have currently.
Awesome. Also, very well said, Abe. So I think I'll wrap up here with that as that's all the time we have for today. Thank you again, Abe, and to all of you in our audience for your time. And we look forward to having you all in our future webinars. I hope you all have a great day.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody.